Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lorna, and I'm an alcoholic. And, it always strikes me as very funny when people introduce me as Lorna from New York City, and I think people get a little startled and think, well, that doesn't sound like a New York accent. And, well, it's not. It's a West Texas accent, actually. So let me kick off by remembering my manners and saying thank you so much for the committee for asking me to speak and choosing me to come here. It's always a great privilege, and I'm always a little shocked. I say this whenever I speak west of the Rockies, or especially in California. I think that I'm in the land of the great speakers, and if they find out, it's sort of like fee, fi, fo, fum. I hear the blood of an Englishwoman. So it's wonderful to be here. And when I first used to speak, I used to think and I used to say, well, I hope there's something I can say that's helpful to you, and I hope you get something out of my talk. And now I realize, that I'm not here for your benefit. I'm here because God thinks I need a lot of help. And so I get to do this. So thank you very much. And also to the committee, thank you so much for the wonderful basket in my room and for the little gift. And I got a blue mug, glass mug with a silver rim. It was so classy. So I very much appreciate the care and attention to that. So I've been very grumpy all day, and I'm still very grumpy, and I was sitting there praying to not be grumpy anymore, that I could give a message of great spiritual wisdom, and but the trouble is I'm grumpy, and I don't know, it's something I have no control over, but your laughing about it is very, very helpful. And when I told Charlie that I was grumpy, he said, good, give it to them. So I got up at 4:30 this morning, New York time, and maybe that's why I'm a little grumpy. So, but I downed a whole load of chocolate-covered raisins, so maybe I'll get a little jolt in a minute. So to kick off, when I first started speaking, at the end of my talk, I used to say to myself, good God, the next time I speak, I must get my story straight. And there's no getting it straight. I cannot get it straight. I see my drinking differently all the time, and my story is constantly being revealed to me. My desires and my hopes and my dreams constantly change. And I feel the present very differently all the time. It's constantly changing. And, before I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, I had a perfectly wonderful childhood. AA ruined my childhood. As I got sober, my parents became worse and worse and worse. And till they were bordering on demonic. And I would go home to England. I couldn't stay with them. I had to stay in hotels, and it was just really kind of bad. And then it started to cut, and as I thought about this dreadful, savage childhood that I had, I thought, good God, how fortunate I was to have survived. I'm lucky that I got through it so unscathed, relatively. And now it's come full circle. And I feel very blessed to have the childhood I had. And I feel very grateful to have had the parents I had. And I'm a very blessed human being to have had that particular set of circumstances in my life. And when I came into the program, before I came in, I felt totally unworthy. Low self-esteem was something it was something to achieve. It was something to obtain, something to aspire to. And then, as I got sober, I started to feel worthy. You told me that I did have value, that I was worthy. And now that's come full circle also. And not to sound sort of 14th century saintly about this, but I feel that I am unworthy of this. There is nothing I have done in my lifetime that in any way warrants the magnitude of the gift I've been given by being in Alcoholics Anonymous. Nothing weighs it. It is a total gift. And my sponsor used to say to me that there were two things she never wanted to hear out of my mouth. One of them was, it's hard for me. It's hard for me to make phone calls. It's hard for me to go to meetings. It's hard for me to be friendly. She'd say, honey, it's hard for us all, and Alcoholics Anonymous is not for the faint-hearted. And the other thing she didn't want to hear out of my mouth was, I deserve. I deserve to be happy. I deserve a nice relationship. I deserve a good job. I deserve a nice place to live. She said, honey, if you got what you deserve. She said, you can be grateful that you have a God of mercy and not a God of justice. So, anyway, as I said, I see this as, I think it's best when one feels grumpy to be classic about the story. And classically, I'll just tell a bit about my drinking story. And I woke up one summer morning, and I'd had a girlfriend staying with me overnight. And I couldn't wait to get rid of her. She was from out of town, and she was just staying in New York overnight, and finally she left. And I went down to the local bodega, and I bought myself a whole container of Tropicana. And I came back upstairs, and I mixed myself a carafe of vodka and orange juice. And I poured myself a tumbler full. And as this mixture went down, and it hit my stomach, and that wonderful feeling came up through the tributaries of my body, and it hit my soul. My soul went, oh, we can keep them at bay just one more day. We can keep it going one more day. And I remember this fantastic feeling that I had, and I remember it was the day that God was really after me. Because I remember thinking to myself and looking at this tumbler and thinking, good God, this is a morning drink. I am drinking in the morning. And it was so amazing to me, this revelation to me. And, the Chinese have a saying, or the Asians, I don't know whether it's just Chinese or it's an Asian saying, that it's a probably Buddhist saying, that the beginning of wisdom is to call something by its correct name. Now, I've had a drink in the morning many, many times, but I called it brunch. I called it gallery openings. I called it toasting the bride. I called it summertime. I called it on the beach. I called it all sorts of things, but I never called it drinking in the morning. And, I had difficulty naming things for what they really were. I always had to couch it in something else. But anyway, this, clarity and health came zooming through into my consciousness. And I said, ooh, this is a morning drink. And right on the heels of possible health, the disease came trotting. And the disease whispered, and it said to me, Lorna, the sort of woman you are, the kind of mind you have, the intelligence of you, the sort of job you have to hold down, why do you always make things so difficult for yourself? Why do you have to really kind of tough it out all the time? Why don't you make it easy for yourself? Why don't you do this every morning? And I thought to myself, that's right. Why don't I do this every morning? It would be so wonderful to have this great feeling to go off down Madison Avenue and go to work in the morning. And with that thought, I could not release the glass from my hand. I could not put the glass down. It was stuck in my hand. And I had a date. I had an aged lover at the time, and I had a date with him, and he. Are you all right? It wasn't you, was it? No? Well, I don't know, Charlie, really. So anyway, I was getting showered, ready for this rendezvous, and I could not put the glass, I was soaping myself up, sudsing myself, and trying to hold the glass out of the spray. And suddenly, God came to me again in a flash, and I realized, oh my God, I have a problem with this. I related it to cigarette smoking. I knew I had a problem with cigarettes. I knew I just couldn't stop smoking cigarettes. And my diary was littered with references to smoking. It was, wish I could stop smoking, feel sick about smoking, gave up smoking today, haven't smoked for 2 weeks, only going to smoke other people's cigarettes. Smoking cigarettes again. And I knew I had a problem, and I knew I had done every disgusting thing imaginable with cigarettes. I'd crunched them up and thrown them in the garbage, only to retrieve them the following morning, and they're covered in coffee grounds and things, and, I've dried them out in the oven, and I've taken drags off other people's cigarettes that have got whooping coughs or something, I haven't cared. I've gone to any lengths to smoke. And in the end, I loved to have them right here. And in the end, I bought myself a Dunhill holder so that I could keep it clenched in my teeth all the time, so that I'd have the cigarette right here. I couldn't let the cigarette down. And I was fascinated with people that could take a puff of a cigarette and put it in the ashtray and talk, and then pick it up again and take another puff and put it in. I couldn't. Once it was lit, it was in my hands all the time. I would have had them coming out of my ears if I could. And so I made the connection. Ooh, this is like the cigarette. I cannot put this drink down out of my hand. And I was weaving around in the shower, and I think God took mercy on me, and I think he thought, oy vey, I have a very Jewish God, and I better get this one some help. And I found myself that afternoon in an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, it's a long, long story, but basically to say, I had been married, actually, and my husband had walked out the door. And I thought it was the most fascinating thing he'd ever done. And it really caught my attention. And someone said I wanted to get this fellow back. And someone said to me that they'd been to a meeting of Al-Anon, and they said to me, Lorna, all the women sound just like you. And I went to this meeting of Al-Anon, and they talked about, that they suggested that one went to open AA meetings. So I started going to open AA meetings because I wanted to learn how to get him back. And I was fascinated with AA, riveted with these stories. And, I would go, after work, I'd go to the bar across from where I worked. I worked on 76th Street and Madison Avenue, and it was right opposite the Carlisle Hotel. So I'd nip across the bar to the Carlisle Hotel, and I'd have some drinks, because I love drinking on an empty stomach. Wouldn't eat all day, love to drink on an empty stomach. And then I'd say, ooh, it's 7 o'clock. I'm going to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'll be back. And I'd nip up the road to this meeting called Lenox Hill, which is the silk stocking meeting of AA in New York. And I'd listen to all these stories. And I'd go back to the bar. And I mean, what did I know about anonymity? I had no idea. And I'd say, well, you'd never guess who is an alcoholic. And I'd relate details of their stories and all sorts of things. And I think that if anyone wonders what is the common denominator, what it is that, cuts us out as alcoholics, I think that if you want to come to these meetings and you like listening to these stories about how people tried suicide and how they threw up on their bosses and each other and crawled on the bathroom floor and lost their marriages and all that, and you find that fascinating and interesting, there's something the matter with you. And I not only found it interesting, I wanted to go to coffee shops afterwards and talk about it some more, and then talk on the phone some more about it. And I loved coming to the meetings. So it's pretty sick stuff. But anyway, this particular Sunday, I found myself in an AA meeting because the truth of the matter was, I often hear people use this phrase, I didn't come into AA to blah, 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 and I didn't come into AA. Well, I didn't come into AA. I truly was brought in here. I didn't wake up one morning and think, my life is a little shabby. I think I'll nip along to Alcoholics Anonymous. It wasn't like that at all. I was here for about 2 years before I realized, oh my God, I'm in AA. And so I was totally brought in here, and I went to this meeting this particular Sunday, and my God was there for me. In the Mother Teresa used to say that she ministered to Christ in the distressing disguise of the poor. And God was there in the distressing disguise of an old hag. And that's the way she looked to me. She had broken capillaries on her face, and she just looked, very beaten to me, like one would imagine a woman alcoholic that's really had it rough. And she told my story up to where I was at that moment. And then she went on. For another 15 years she went on. And the curtain parted. And I saw with that dazzling clarity, my God, she's me and I'm her. And I connected with, it's the alcohol. It's the alcohol. But we get those insights, and they're flashes of insight, but it doesn't mean to say that they're wide, insightful things and that it stays with us. I ran out onto Lexington Avenue. I was so horrified by this revelation. I ran out onto Lexington Avenue. I went into the nearest bar and I threw down another screwdriver. And and the next day I walked into a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I said, I'm here for myself. And I didn't know quite what that meant. And, my progression, well, suffice to say, I used to end my story there. I used to finish it, and then I'd go on to talk about my sobriety. Well, when I was 15 years sober, I went through the worst hell I've ever been in my life. And it was an indescribable pain, and it was emotional. And I don't think it really matters what brings about that pain. For me, it was the thing that kicked it off was a very common thing. It was the end of a relationship. But people go through that kind of pain. I used to sit in rooms and judge people about when they were going through agony. Like someone would put their hand up and say their cat died or something. And I think, well, Jesus, you want something to be upset about. Your cat died? Or they would, a man would lose his job or something like that. And I think, well, good God, there's people in the world. And I'd be very judgmental about that. And now I never know what's going to rocket that pain into someone's life. And very often people will look at other people askance with, you're upset over that? They can't imagine it. And I don't think it really matters what it is that tips it off. But in some of us it gets tipped off. And very often in the teenage years, very often after 10 years. And for me, it was, I went into subterranean fields of pain. All the pain that I had never allowed myself to experience, I believe, through countless lifetimes, and all the pain that I'd ever dished out to others, I got to feel. And it was then, when I was 15 years sober, that I was very glad that I'd taken notice of what you told me in the beginning. I was very delighted that I knew how to go to meetings. I was very delighted that I knew how to share no matter what I looked like, no matter how much time I had, that I had to share. And this pain lasted, and God stripped me of everything. The big book flew out the window, my sponsees became my sponsors, all the trite stuff of the sayings of the program just flew away. I really got to understand the 6th step. I really got to understand very deeply that, people would often say, well, if you're in pain, you're not doing something right. It is so ridiculous and so cruel to say that to someone. If we're in pain, it's very often an indication that we're doing something very, very right. And birth is very painful. And new birth can be very painful. And especially when you're an adult. Especially when you're over 10 years or something. And I'm just generalizing. It just seems to me that people often come up to me and say, oh my God, I'm 12 years sober and I'm going through hell. And very often the hell is that all the things I did, I always felt very powerful in my program. I know how to pray, I know how to meditate, I know how to 12-step, I know how to do this, that and the other thing. And all of a sudden, none of it was working. And what I judged working was, I'm still in pain, therefore I'm not doing it right. I'm not doing a right 4th step. I'm not doing, and it was God, I think, saying to me, stop applying what you think should be done to this. Have you really turned your will and your life over to the care of God? Or do you think that you can get out of this by a 4th, the 5th, the 6th, the 7th step? And, until I really surrendered that thing on a very, very deep level, that my life is not my own, and a power greater than myself runs my life. And, I often tell this story that during this time, I had a very close relationship with Mother Teresa, and I'd gone to India many times and worked, and this time I went to India, and because I know that the antidote for that sort of pain is working with others, right? Well, I was starting to feel envious of the lepers, I was like, oh God. And Mother was very sweet to me, and she could tell that something really major was happening in my life, and I was there a few months, and I couldn't do a thing. I couldn't. It's that sort of pain that just centers you on yourself. You can't think, you can't get out of it. And So a few months later, she was in New York, and we met up, and she said, "How are you doing? How is it going for you?" And I said, "Mother, it's hell. It's absolute hell." And she said, "Ooh," she said, "how God must love you." She said, "But," she said, "he wants to be very intimate with you. But he is a jealous lover, and he is burning out of your soul everything unlike himself." And I said to her, "Well, gee, that's just swell, Mother. But, I wish he'd stop kissing me quite so passionately here." Anyway, as I said, it was that pain, not to scare anyone. It lasted me 4 years. I sat in these rooms and I carried on and I rolled. Sometimes I was on the floor, kneeling on the floor, clutching the seat to my chair, saying, "I cannot believe what's happening to me. I cannot believe." And it was a sort of pain that long outlasted the patience of my friends. They just disappeared. And people would nudge each other and say, "Well, how long has she got? 17 years? 18 years? Well, I certainly don't want what she's got." And it was very bad. But as I was saying, I was very grateful then. And for anyone in the room that's new, if you think, "Well, I don't want to do this," or "This doesn't apply to me," or "This is a big one." I never drank at home, so it's all right for me to have alcohol in the house. I'm a big thing about alcohol in the house, and I'm going to talk about it. They say that any person that has alcohol in the house, any alcoholic, any member of AA that has alcohol in the house, no matter for what reason they say it's there, it's got their name on it. And I remember fighting with my sponsor because she asked me, "Do you have alcohol in the house?" And I said, "Well, yes, I do. I have some very fine bottles of wine." And she said, "Get rid of them." And I said, "Now listen, really?" I said, if I suddenly found out I was allergic to diamonds, would you tell me to throw those away? And she said, "Well, listen to you, equating alcohol with diamonds. Throw it away." And people will often say, "Well, just because I've stopped drinking doesn't mean to say I want to impose that on others. And when my friends come over, I want to be able to offer them a drink. I want to be social." Well, people that don't smoke don't keep cartons of cigarettes in their house. And, Orthodox Jews do not have ham and Swiss cheese in the refrigerator to offer to their Gentile friends. And Muslims don't have the odd side of pork down in the freezer. And I've yet to go, it might happen, but I've yet to go to someone's house and they have a coffee table and syringes and little piles of cocaine and heroin on the table, and they say, "Well, we don't shoot up, but maybe you'd like to." So, and I can assure you that if I had alcohol in the house, alcoholism would have drunk it. And I always say, that I don't want to drink again. There's no way I want to drink again. But I've got a disease called alcoholism that wants to drink again. And it's that disease. And I can't say, "Well, I will do this applies to me and that doesn't apply to me," because I have alcoholism. I don't have my alcoholism. It's not my disease. It's not this little personal cozy thing called my disease, like my body. I have alcoholism. I have the disease of alcoholism, and anything any alcoholic has ever done that's sitting on death row, from that to child molesting, to suicide, to murder, to gossip, to whatever any alcoholic has ever done under the influence of alcoholism, if I have the same disease, I'm capable of doing it. And when I came into the program, when I walked through the doors of AA, there was no one standing there with a clipboard that checked me and said, "Well, how much did you drink? Did you hide the bottles? Did you mix your drinks? How much money do you have in the bank? Have you ever been married? Do you have any children? What's your income? No one asked me anything. You just gave me exactly the same program as you gave the university professor, as you gave the person that hasn't finished high school. You gave me the same program as you gave someone living in a trailer park, as you gave someone on Fifth Avenue. You gave me the same program that you gave the teenager, that you gave the head of industry. You gave me the same program that you gave to people, no matter what color people walk into these rooms. We all get the same program. So obviously you thought I was in just as much danger of the next drink as the person that had been on the Bowery for 40 years. And I was told, don't take what you like and leave the rest, because you'll be greedy. Take it all, because you'll never know when you're going to need it all. So anyway, I'm in AA. I crossed the threshold of AA. And my thinking was, in the beginning, well, I came into the program thinking, I thought all sorts of things. But one of the things I thought was, I've really nipped this in the bud. You know, I can see that I'm the sort that I have a tendency towards alcoholism, that if I don't watch it, I can really develop a very bad problem. But aren't I smart that I've come in here before it's really got too bad? And I knew that I wasn't that bad. How I knew was that I listened to you. And some of you had been here a year. And some of you had been here 4 years. And some had been here 10 years. And I thought, poor things. You know, they must have drunk so much because they must have real bad brain damage if they have to keep coming day after day because they keep forgetting it in between times. And it's not going to be that way for me. Well, I've been here 23 years and I'm still trying to get it. And I had that thought, and I also thought that I walked into AA and you took one look at me and you could see that I added great tone and class to AA. And I thought you took a look at me. I don't know why you're laughing so hard. You looked at me and you thought, well, now, thank God Lorna has arrived, because now we can hold our heads up high. We don't have to be quite so anonymous, because she is among us. She will be our figurehead. She will go before us and make the path straight. Someone else said that, I know. Anyway, thinking of John the Baptist here. So, I always get my biblical stuff mixed up here. Anyway, I had that thought, you know, that there was really that's how you looked at me. And then, on the other hand, I thought, oh my God, you know, I hope they don't find out that I don't really drink, that I haven't really drunk enough. I have no idea how to make a martini. And I hope they don't kick me out. And I had this terrible fear that one of you was going to come up and tap me on the shoulder and say, hey, listen, sister, exactly how much do you drink? I mean, we're a busy organization in here, and, you know, we notice you always sit in the front row and eat an awful lot of cookies, and do you mind, you know? And I thought you were going to ask me to leave. And whereas, you know, I thought I added great tone and class and depth to Alcoholics Anonymous, in reality, I walked in and I was wearing the same dress that I'd been wearing for the last 3 months. I had other clothes, but I couldn't be bothered to put another outfit together, you understand. It was just too much. And I wore gobs and gobs of makeup. And I was like Elizabeth I. I didn't take it off at night. I just piled more on every day. And I was festooned in jewellery. I had jewellery all over the place. And I always say, you know, I'm so grateful that I came into AA before the fashion of tattooing and piercing came out, because I'm sure I would have had the Last Supper put on my chest or something. And probably a plate put in my lower lip. Something eye-catching like that I probably would have had. because, I've always been one for extremes. So, you took a look at me and you could tell this one is really off the wall. And as I said, I had this aged lover and I was going out with him and I wanted to marry him. Now, the fact that he hadn't asked me or even brought it up didn't seem to pose any problem to me. And the reason I wanted to marry this fellow was that he had the one thing in the world I wanted. And it wasn't a great love of me, it wasn't noble feelings, it wasn't gentlemanly behaviour, it wasn't a particularly large bank account, which would have been very attractive. It was large, but not large enough for an alcoholic. But he had the one thing in the world I wanted, and that was he had a maid. And I wanted the maid, I wanted someone to lay my clothes out, to run my bath, to brush my hair, to just sort of, I was too busy. And I needed someone to take care of me because I just couldn't keep it all together. And as I said, I smoked in those days. And any chair in his house you sat in, there would be beside it a little table, and on the table would be a silver container of loose cigarettes, an ashtray, and a lighter that worked. And I was always looking for one or all three of those things, always looking for them. And so I was willing to let this fellow touch the sacred temple in order to get to the maid. And in some circles they call that prostitution. But, we'll go to any lengths. So, anyway, gradually, as I stayed sober, as I stayed in AA, these things got revealed to me. And whereas I thought that I had nipped this thing in the bud, whereas I thought I was sort of lightly dusted with alcoholism, that I didn't have a deep case of it, I got to see, and this is over a 2-year period, I got to see that I was riddled with alcoholism. That I hadn't nipped it in the bud at all. That, as I got sober, my story went back further and further and further. When I first came in, I thought, thought I'd been going through a bad patch for maybe 6 months. The fact that I'd been going through that patch since I was 4 seemed to elude me. And really, I should have been taken, I think, from the delivery room to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't stand a chance. If I tell you about myself as a child, if I saw me today in a playground, I would be able to spot me instantly. I was such a lunatic. And you talk to my brother and sister, and they grew up in a totally different household from the one I grew up in. I saw it completely differently from the way they saw it. Anyway, so I'm in, and my story is gradually being revealed to me. And my sponsor was wonderful. I had a sponsor that never told me you better get in touch with your drinking story, or you better write down, or, you better understand it. Because she knew that I couldn't. I couldn't see where alcohol had passed my lips, let alone the fact that I had a problem with it. I couldn't see that what I did was drinking. I couldn't call it drinking. I couldn't get that. I wanted to. I wanted to have a really good story. I wanted to be able to get up with some great scar on my face or be missing an arm or something. And as I got up to speak, you would nudge each other and you would say, "Bottle fight, Avenue D," And I would have some badge of my drinking. And I didn't. I just had this sort of wimpy, mucky, shabby, icky female story. And as I got sober, I looked back on my drinking and I could see, well, maybe that wasn't falling asleep at the dinner table. Maybe that was passing out. And all that sort of stuff, But my sponsor, this was the thing she said to me that was riveting for me and which kept me in. She constantly held up the high road for me. She constantly would say to me, well, look, if you want the high road, and I always wanted the high road. I always wanted to be, to have first class. One of my favorite phrases is, I'm forever clutching rhinestones to my breast while God is waiting to give me diamonds. I'm always hanging on to this thing that's kind of like half tatty while this wonderful thing is waiting for me. I'm like, no, I want this. And she said to me, Lorna, if you stay with us, you will be able to develop a life that will be like having a quiver of golden arrows on your back. And when you come into a situation in life that you're not too sure how to handle, or that you've never faced before, you'll be able to reach back, select the perfect arrow, put it in your bow, and hit bullseye every time. And the idea of hitting bullseye was so phenomenal to me. I wanted to hit bullseye. I was never right. I was never appropriate. You know how alcoholics were always whining. I never felt like I fit in. I never felt like I belonged. Well, I didn't. I didn't fit in. I worked, I had a job, I had a very, very public job. I'm the first woman art auctioneer in America, and I worked for one of the major art auction houses. And, at the end of my drinking, just as an example, Governor Rockefeller at the time was an avid collector of Chinese albums, painting albums, and I was in that department, and he came in, and it was just after the riots at Attica. And I thought he ought to know how I felt about Attica. And, I wasn't employed to give my political opinions on the stuff. And at the end of my drinking, well, not exactly at the end, it had been quite a while, I was shopping in thrift shops. Now, I'd shopped in thrift shops all the way along because, I could buy the odd handbag or jacket that would be a wonderful accent to an outfit. But now I was dressing out of thrift shops because I couldn't face department stores. I couldn't go in and face all that stuff. And one day at work, a co-worker came up to me and she took me aside and very nicely, very gently, she spoke to me as one would to a patient, not that one didn't want to disturb. And she asked me, Lorna, why are you wearing a maid's uniform? And as soon as she said it, I took a look and I realized, oh my God, it is. It had the little collar and it had the belt and the cuffs on here and the pockets. And I bought it because I thought it made me look neat and tidy. And I was desperately trying to get it together, But I had this very high-powered job. And, when people came in to talk to me about their collections, they must have wanted to give me their coat to hang up or something. I think they were a little startled that I was the expert. And I think it was only this accent that got me through a lot of times. And so it was just things like that started to be, really revealed to me, and when she said that I could be appropriate, I knew I wasn't. I knew I was totally out to lunch and off whack, and that I was always my dress was a big deal. I think a lot of women come in here and get sober in their dress. It's very noticeable. And, I was always laughing inappropriately. I was just too loud or too... But that phrase followed me a lot in my life. Everyone always said to me, something, you're too much. You're just too much. And when I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, I heard the words of, why don't you try becoming more of what you really are? And, I've spoken a long time already, and the time is going, and I want to talk about just some of the things that have happened to me over the last 23 years, of course, there have been a multitude of things that have happened to me. And one of them is that my desire for drinking has not left. And I think it's not like it's a constant desire. I have no bell-clanging reality about my drinking. I have no thing of a rush to the hospital or being underneath a bus or anything like that. As I said, mine was just a slow erosion of the fabric of my life. And once I took one step down on the ladder, the next step didn't look so far. And the next step and the next step. Until when I was at bottom, it felt very ordinary to me. It didn't feel like bottom. It just felt ordinary. So when I came in here and you said it'll get better, I didn't really know what you were talking about, because it didn't feel that bad to me, because I was so used to being there. It was only in recovery that I realized how far down I'd gone. And, so the desire to drink, and it's not like it's a pounding thing, but it's there. And I'm very glad that it's there. I'm very aware of it. I don't always love sobriety. I'm not always crazy about seeing everything in great color. And I'm not always crazy about having all my systems blasting. But I don't always love everyone in the program. Like I can be grumpy. But I'm in love with Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm crazy about AA. And it's the one thing that has been instilled in me. And I was talking to a friend today and saying, if you don't have a passion for this program, get one. And fall in love with Alcoholics Anonymous. Have a love affair. And when you have a love affair with someone, no matter how busy you are, you always make time. Always make time. And that's the way, I've been on a diet of 2 meetings a day for my entire sobriety. And I don't go because I'm so wonderful or anything like that. I go because I'm greedy. I don't want you getting something I'm not getting. And I know that it's happening in these rooms. And, I've traveled a great deal, and I'm not always able to get to 2 meetings a day, but I consider myself a 2-meeting-a-day person. And I'm this wacky on 2 meetings a day. Can you imagine if they let me loose? So just a few things of sobriety, just a few workings of step work for me. And I would really like to talk about some major things that have happened to me in this past year. But one of the stories, a friend of mine reminded me today that I haven't told this story in quite a while. And I'd like to tell it again, that it's a wonderful third step story. And I was at one time in the Sinai desert. And I'd gone on a pilgrimage to the Holy Land and I was gone into the Sinai. And I was there by myself, and I wanted to take a trip somewhere. I wanted to go somewhere. And I decided to go on a camel. So I went and got this Bedouin to take me on his camel. And he and I are both we're both on the same camel, and we're into the desert. We're about not half an hour into this journey. And suddenly he slips off the back of the camel and he hands me the reins. And in Arabic and broken English, he says to me, "The camel knows the way." And he walked off. And I'm turning around, screaming at this fellow in sort of a muted way, because I didn't want the camel to think that it meant giddy up, full speed ahead. I said, "Where the hell are you going? You don't leave me here." And he just kept on walking, just walked and disappeared over a dune. As I often said, over that dune was probably his Ferrari or something. But all I could see was endless desert. And you have no idea what fear is or what the third step is until you've been abandoned on a camel in the Sinai. And And I had such fear, that awful, acid feeling in my stomach of, I've been left here. There's nothing to see. It's not like an American desert where little creatures are running around and things. It's a desert. And I just was absolutely panic-stricken. And also added to this calamity was the fact that most camels there have wonderful romantic names, Arabic names, like Rashid or Salim or something. And my camel's name was Bob Marley. And so, I thought, how is this camel is never going to find his way out of this desert. So, I went through this terrible panic and of thinking I'm going to die here, I'm going to be left, or something's going to happen to me. And then I had to really apply the third step. I thought, what can I do? I have to believe what he told me. I have to. There's nothing else I can do. And then a camel isn't something you can hop off like you can a horse and jump on again. And they're miserable beasts. And especially if they have embarrassing names like that, they get very grumpy. And so I just surrendered. I said, well, this is it. This might be it. This might be it. Your life has been wonderful. Thank God for what has happened to you. And this is it. And then I turned it over. And then, on the heels of that, came the thought, well, of course I'm in the Sinai. Isn't this where God brings all his favorite people to talk to? Did he not talk to Elijah here, or Jesus, or one of them? And now he's brought me here, and he's obviously... He's going to talk to me so that I've got a message I can take back to them. And so, I had this really grandiose thing of, of course. Why didn't I see it before? And but 2.5 hours later, Bob Marley and I arrived at the destination, and there was no tablets that I had been given or anything, and no great message except I should have worn a hat, and nothing except except that I went through all the phases that one can go through, of very great, the love of the adventure, the fear, the surrender, grandiosity, spiritual grandiosity, and just the journey. And I know everyone's anxious to get to the dance, so I'm just going to jump into my last year. This last year has been so phenomenal for me. And 2 major things have happened to me in this last year. One of them was my brother. I've had a very estranged relationship with my brother. And it's not that it was estranged because we'd had an argument. It was estranged because of distance. And I came to this country when I was 18 years old. And I think there was a certain amount of, like, oh God, she's off in America, that kind of rubbish. And I don't know why. But anyway, I built up this thing about him. And, we sent Christmas cards and birthday cards. But I missed this relationship. I really wanted this relationship with my brother. And, I don't think men understand how phenomenal it is to have a brother. And I really wanted to have my brother. And I tried all sorts of things over the years, and nothing seemed to work. And finally, I just turned it over, and I couldn't seem to put a foot right. And even when I turned it over, nothing happened. I think we often turn it over and we think it's going to be miraculous, and the other person's going to come to their senses and realize what a wonderful person you are, and how they should be in your company. And he wasn't. I think he was glad that I wasn't writing or sending presents or doing anything. Anyway, this past year I went to England, and I was determined to go and see him and be with him. I'd seen him over the years, but not much. And I took a train to Yorkshire, where he lives with his wife and that. And on the train going to Yorkshire, I asked God, I said, God, please let me not bring up the past in any negative way whatsoever, only in pleasant ways. Please let me reaffirm how wonderful he is, how happy I am to be here. Please let me talk about the positive things. Please let me be a presence of light and joy in this weekend. Please let me not be grumpy. And I had the most fabulous weekend with my brother. And I heard my brother say to his wife things like, well, you go on, I'm going to walk with Lorna. And I mean, just to hear that, just to hear my name spoken in a courteous, loving way out of my brother's mouth was so amazing for me. And when it was time to leave, my train was due to leave at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and he kept postponing it. He kept saying, oh, there's another train, there's another train. And finally, at 6 o'clock, he ran me to the station, and he could have taken me to a train that was 10 minutes away, but he ran me to one that was 40 minutes away. And so we're standing in the station, and we embrace, and I say thank you so much. It's been a wonderful weekend. And I have the ticket in my hand, and I'm going through the barrier. And there's that thought of, phew, I got away with it. I've done the 9th step. I've done it. And then that thought came, good is the enemy of the best. And I walked back to him, and I said, Sean, this is very difficult for me to say, but I really want to say something. If I've ever done or said anything that in any way has caused you to want to separate from me, I am really sorry. And here I am, being this emotional with an Englishman. It's not very easy. And he was like, yes, I understand. And gave me a few pats. But we embraced and we hugged, and in that instant, I had my brother. I had my brother, and I've listened to you over these years. I've listened to you talk about the healings in your family, phenomenal healings with your children, with your parents, with your families, and I've listened. And we always want to feel, but I'm different. My situation's different. You don't understand. I have to have alcohol in the house. You don't understand. I can't write down a 4th step. You don't understand. I don't like getting down on my knees. You don't understand. It's different for me. And I said, you don't understand. This is Sean. We're English. It's a different sort of a relationship. We've had no connection. And I'm an alcoholic. I have alcoholism, and the program applies to me too. And I'm here to tell you that it works, that I too have had a reconciliation with my brother, that I too have had the experience that you've talked about. It's worked for me too. And I went back to see them again in November. This was August that I was there. And I went again in November, and I went to see him again, and it was better. It was even better. So this program is not a fluke. It's not a hit and miss thing. It's not this thing, well, I've done the 9th step, now I'll never see them again because I never want to upset it and have to create more 9th step stuff. And I can't maintain it. And the other phenomenal thing that's happened to me this year, and it might not be your idea of phenomenal, but it's my idea. We come in and we're offered this thing that life will be beyond your wildest dreams. Well, you said that to me, and over these years I've thought, well, I could have thought of something far wilder than this. This is not too wild. And my wild dreams, I know, they always involved money, men and mansions. And it's always, something along those lines. But I think the phrase means beyond our wildest dreams. It's like beyond, Lorna, your tacky level. It's beyond your wildest dreams. It's out there. It's got nothing to do with you. And
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think.
What happened to me this year was, Mother Teresa died a few years ago, and as I said, I was very, very close with her. We had a very involved, interesting relationship. And when she's up for canonization in the Catholic Church, they make saints, and she's in the line for canonization, and they have to gather what they call evidence for this process. So I got a call in the spring from her missionaries of charity asking if I would be kind enough to submit copies of all my personal letters from Mother to the tribunal. So I was very flattered, and some of Mother's letters are very personal to me, and she's written me a few letters where she has gone to AA meetings, and those I will give to General Services for the archives. And Mother was crazy about AA, loved Alcoholics Anonymous. I often teased her, "You sure you don't have a problem, Mother?" And but anyway, she was very intrigued with AA. And so I was very flattered to be asked for this. So I sent them off and did that. And then this summer, I have written a book. It's all about me, and it's absolutely fascinating. But anyway, it's my spiritual journey, and I found out that I wasn't requested of me, but I found out that this thing in the Vatican, whatever it is, had requested a copy of my book to be submitted, and my book was submitted. And an English friend of mine, who's a wonderful Cockney, said to me, "Oh," he said, "well, that's it, and isn't it?" He said, "The Pope's probably in bed at night drinking his cocoa and reading your book." And I just was, let's face it, that's pretty fabulous. It's a pretty fabulous thing. Then I have this friend of mine who's a hermit, and she lives in the desert in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and she's an old nun, and she knows of my relationship, and she wrote to me and she said, I'm sure that you'll be asked as a witness, you'll be called as a witness for Mother. And I thought, this dotty old woman out in the desert, the sun's gotten to her, and that will never happen. Well, I came home from one day, and in my mailbox was an envelope and from the Metropolitan Tribunal, and it was requesting my presence to give my formal testimony into the life, virtues and sanctity of the servant of God, Mother Teresa of Calcutta. And I feel so 14th century actually, but ladies and gentlemen, you are looking at a witness to a saint. And the possibilities of Alcoholics Anonymous are endless, I never thought that I would be... Now, when I walked through the doors, if you had said to me, "Sweetheart, if you stay sober, one day you will be able to be instrumental in helping this little old lady in Calcutta become a saint." Please. I would have been out there. It was not at all interesting to me, but I want to tell you, it has thrilled me. It is so fantastic. It is such a privilege. It appeals to my grandiosity because I'm a part of history, but also I'm a part. It's not about my canonization. Although I will if anyone's interested, I will let you know what the process is, so when my turn comes, you'll know what to say, because I want to be a saint. I want to be. And I said to someone the other day, well, really, what I really want is sort of a cross between Sophia Loren and Jesus. And she said, well, Lorna, you're already it. I said, you are the sort of friend a girl wants. And anyway, and the thing that's so wonderful about this is that it has thrilled me so much, and it has nothing really to do with me. It's all about helping someone else and being just a very, very tiny cog in a wheel of a much bigger movement. And that's what you have given me. The spiritual life talks about, there's three processes of the spiritual life: to find oneself, to know oneself, and to forget oneself. And those things are happening all in a long-term period and in a constant moment-by-moment time frame. So there's so much more I would love to say. I've had a wonderful time here. I never thought I'd stay awake through this. I want to thank you so much for going to meetings, for putting money in the basket, for getting speakers, for doing all the things that you do, for all the service that you do. My dear friend Janine picked me up from the airport today, and for all the wonderful things you do for the service in AA, because if you weren't here, I'd have absolutely nowhere to go. And so thank you for your sobriety. Thank you.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.